1 to 3, the rain had not stopped. For 3 days in the small riverside village, near the deep tropical forest, water covered the roads, trees bent under the force of the storm, and people stayed locked inside their homes praying for safety. Everyone in the village feared one thing more than the flood itself: the giant pythons that lived deep inside the swampy jungle. For years, villagers told stories about enormous snakes appearing during heavy rains. Most people believed the tales were exaggerated, but one terrifying night proved the legends were real. Emma Carter, leader of the local animal rescue team, received an emergency call just after midnight. A frightened farmer shouted into the phone that a giant python had trapped several goats near the riverbank and was moving toward the village school where families had taken shelter from the floodwaters. Emma immediately gathered her rescue crew: Jake, a wildlife expert; Sophia, a fearless veterinarian; and Marcus, a former forest ranger who knew every corner of the jungle. They loaded flashlights, ropes, tranquilizer equipment, cages, and medical kits into their truck before driving through the storm. The roads were dangerous. Fallen branches blocked their path, and muddy water splashed across the windshield. Thunder shook the sky as lightning revealed the dark outline of the forest ahead. Despite the danger, the team pushed forward. They had rescued injured tigers, trapped bears, and even crocodiles before, but tonight felt different. When they arrived near the village school, terrified residents pointed toward the flooded field behind the building. The rescue team carefully approached, their boots sinking into mud. Suddenly, Jake froze. "There," he whispered. A massive python moved silently through the water. Its scales reflected the lightning like dark armor. The snake was far larger than any python they had ever seen, nearly 30 feet long and thick as a tree trunk. Children inside the school cried while parents held them tightly. The python slowly raised its head, sensing movement nearby. Marcus quietly formed a plan. "We can't hurt it," he said. "It's scared because of the flooding. We need to guide it away from the village." Emma nodded, though fear tightened her chest. One wrong move could cost someone's life. Jake prepared a tranquilizer dart while Sophia stayed ready with medical equipment. Marcus and Emma carefully moved to opposite sides of the field, hoping to distract the snake long enough for Jake to get a clear shot. The python suddenly lunged forward with terrifying speed. Villagers screamed. Marcus jumped aside as the snake crashed through a wooden fence. Jake fired the dart, but the storm caused his aim to shift. The tranquilizer barely scratched the python's thick skin. Now angry, the giant serpent turned toward the school. Emma grabbed a metal container and slammed it against a fence repeatedly, creating loud echoes. The python paused and focused on her instead. Slowly, she backed away toward the riverbank, trying to lure it from the families hiding inside. Her heart pounded as the enormous snake followed. The rain intensified, making the ground slippery. Emma nearly fell as she stepped backward through the mud. The python came closer, its massive body gliding silently across the flooded earth. At the riverbank, Marcus suddenly appeared from behind a tree with a heavy rescue net. Jake fired another tranquilizer dart at the exact same moment. This time, the dart struck perfectly near the python's neck. The snake thrashed violently. Water exploded into the air as the rescue team fought to control the creature. Marcus and Emma struggled to hold the net while Jake secured ropes around the python's body. Sophia remained calm despite the chaos, watching carefully for signs the tranquilizer was taking effect. After several exhausting minutes, the giant python finally slowed. The villagers burst into relieved applause. But the mission was not over. The rescue team realized the floods had destroyed much of the python's habitat. If they released it nearby, it would simply return to the village again, searching for dry land and food. They needed to transport the giant, snake deep into a protected wildlife reserve, far away from human settlements. As dawn approached, the team loaded the enormous python into a reinforced transport cage. Exhausted villagers thanked the rescuers for saving their families without harming the animal. One little boy stepped forward and handed Emma a small handmade bracelet for good luck. "You saved us," he said quietly. Emma smiled warmly. The python needed saving too. The team began the long journey toward the wildlife reserve, but halfway through the jungle road, they discovered another disaster. A bridge had collapsed because of the storm. Their truck could go no farther. The forest around them felt strangely silent except for distant thunder and the rustling of trees. Marcus studied the map carefully. The nearest safe release point was still miles away through dense jungle terrain. "We carry the equipment from here," he said. Jake stared at the massive cage. That's easier said than done. Still, they refused to give up. Using wooden poles and heavy straps, the team slowly moved the cage through the muddy forest. Leeches clung to their boots. Insects buzzed around their faces, and exhaustion weighed heavily on their bodies. Hours passed. Then Sophia suddenly noticed something disturbing. Enormous tracks in the mud. Not from the python in the cage. Another one. The team exchanged nervous glances. Before anyone could speak, a deafening hiss echoed through the trees. A second giant python emerged from the jungle shadows, even larger than the first. Its golden eyes locked onto the cage, carrying the tranquilized snake. "It followed us," Marcus whispered. The wild python circled slowly, defensive and aggressive at the same time. Jake realized the truth. 3-3 immediately. "It's protecting its mate." The rescuers were now trapped between thick jungle and a deadly predator. Emma knew they could not fight the snake directly. Hurting it would only make things worse. She quickly searched her surroundings for another solution. Then she spotted a narrow trail leading toward higher ground near the reserve cliffs. "If we can guide it there," she said, "we might avoid an attack." Marcus lit emergency flares while Jake carefully rolled the cage forward. The bright flames confused the python temporarily, giving the team time to move uphill. But the giant serpent continued following them through the jungle. Branches snapped under its enormous weight. The team climbed faster, breathing heavily as rain poured down around them. Finally, they reached the wildlife reserve boundary, a vast protected wetland filled with dense vegetation and deep water, channels perfect for giant reptiles. The wild python stopped near the edge of the clearing, watching carefully. Sophia checked the tranquilized snake inside the cage. "It's waking up." Together, the team opened the reinforced door from a safe distance. Slowly, the giant python emerged into the wetland. For a tense moment, both snakes faced each other silently. Then something incredible happened. The second python gently touched its head against the first, before both creatures disappeared together into the tall swamp grass. The rescue team stood speechless. They had risked their lives not only to save a village, but to protect two magnificent animals driven from their home by disaster. As the storm clouds finally cleared, sunlight broke through the jungle canopy for the first time in days. Emma looked at her exhausted team and smiled proudly. "This," she said softly, "is why we do this job." Weeks later, news of the rescue spread across the country. Videos of the brave team battling the deadly giant pythons went viral online. People praised them for showing courage, compassion, and respect for wildlife even under terrifying conditions. The government later expanded the protected reserve to prevent future conflicts between humans and displaced animals. New rescue stations were built near vulnerable villages, and Emma's team began teaching local communities how to stay safe during floods without harming wildlife. But for the rescuers, the greatest reward came months later during a routine patrol through the reserve. From a distance, Marcus spotted two enormous pythons resting peacefully near the wetlands, hidden beneath golden sunlight and thick jungle vines. Healthy, safe, free. Emma watched silently for a moment before turning away with a smile. In a world filled with fear and destruction, sometimes true heroes were not the ones who destroyed dangerous creatures, but the ones brave enough to protect both people and animals at the same time.